Hey, it's Richie and John.
Ladies and gentlemen, and MAGA maggots too, the Mutual Queer News Network presents Richie and John, voices advocating for queers around the world.
They try to take our voices, they try to steal our rights, but we're not backing down, we're standing tall tonight. Truth, justice, the American way. Richie and John have got something to say. Shining a light where the darkness hides. We stand for freedom and queer pride.
Now here are Richie Roy and John McMullen.
Hello, and welcome back to Richie and John. You may not even remember what our voices sound like, but we are here with you. We've had a little bit of a hiatus. It has been a busy summer for both me and my intrepid co-host, John McMullen, and we are just digging out of it. Meanwhile, the country has been sort of sleepwalking into fascism, which we will get to later. But in the meantime, before we get to that, just want to say we are happy to be back with you. We have a little bit of a new format. We are kind of sort of transitioning to a once a week format right now, so that we can just get you what you need, whether it is the news or interviews or what have you. And there's a lot to get to. But, we really want to be mindful of your time and just be laser focused on the things you need to know about the LGBTQ news and current events that affect you and us and our community. So, John, what's been going on?
A lot. It's been a very busy summer. And, it's also been one of those times of year when I've had to visit the hospital a time or two. I managed to split my head open. And within just a few weeks after that, I had to have heart surgery. So I know that those are not really funny things to talk about, but it's great that I have managed to live through both of them and that I am back and really ready to get back to work with, talking about the stuff that matters to our community. And yes, we're only going to be doing this once a week for a while because things are so busy, but we're going to try and super pack the programs with some really fun stuff, including on this episode, we're going to do both a look at some of the recent news headlines in the community, and we're going to talk in a while with Nick DiRamio, who is a very popular content creator, entertaining as hell, and he actually lives here in Palm Springs. So he'll join us later on in this podcast, whatever you want to call it.
And I'm very excited for that. And in the meantime, I will say, I'm glad that your heart is doing better than Jackie Kennedy's Rose Garden, because that thing now looks like a fucking TGI Fridays patio. It is so sad. But that's beside the point. So we've got some news stories for you this week, and we will start with one that has to do with a license plate.
Yeah, I thought maybe starting off with this one, that there is a little personal tie-in to this, because I put in a request for a license plate, a custom license plate in California months ago. And it was pretty simple. It was the name of the company. And I finally get the plate. It finally shows up. And the tabs that came with it, because they always send you a new set of tabs with the new plate, were already expired by the time that I got them. It was ridiculous. And so I played this seesaw game back and forth with the California DMV over several weeks, and finally they got me the right stickers. I can only imagine how much of a challenge it might have been if I had wanted something that might have been a little more controversial. And you know me, I sometimes like to push that envelope a bit. But in Ohio, a man there has won the right to display a license plate that reads gay, G-A-Y, after a federal judge ruled that the state violated free speech. The Bureau of Motor Vehicles denied William Saki's request for vanity plates reading G-A-Y, homo, H-O-M-O, lesbian, you know how to spell that, calling them inappropriate. But at the same time, the agency approved plates that said no gays, no homos, and no fags.
Wow.
Saki sued, saying that he had applied for the gay plate ahead of National Coming Out Day to affirm his identity. And in court, BMV officials there in Ohio admitted that they had erred and agreed to change their review process. Judge Dan Aaron Polster ordered the agency to follow First Amendment protections and allow previously rejected requests that aren't offensive. Saki says that the ruling affirms the right of LGBTQ Ohioans to live openly without government interference, and his attorney called the decision a swift victory for free speech. And I agree. Some people might argue, people calling people gay is an insult. I don't know. Things are so different in the world today, but it seems to me that we're long past that being an insult.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I have sort of like some thoughts about this because I think that it's both fun and also kind of like, okay, so I'm going to step back for a minute. We have a friend who lives in an undisclosed state, and they got a vanity plate that has Dolly Parton on it because their state issues license plates with Dolly on them, and their license plate tag is DP lover. As in Dolly Parton lover, or maybe a lover of something else.
Right.
If you want to use your imagination. And it's very, very funny, and I love it.
Domestic proclivities.
But, the thing I will say about this is, because I know there are actually oftentimes, there are a lot of sort of First Amendment cases around vanity plates. And clearly here, I mean, the fact that they said no to gay, queer, homo, and lesbian, but said yes to no gays, no homos, no fags is something. This is going to sound very like unfun of me. No vanity plates. They're just ways to register your car. I'm going to say no on them. Like, no one gets any vanity plates. There's no First Amendment, just numbers and letters, random assortment. Like, because there's always like this like rush to get the new vanity plate. Who got the one? Like, you can't get it. Someone already has it. Nah, no more vanity plates. That's what I'm going to say. That's my take. Nah.
I've had several.
Put a bumper sticker on your car if you want to.
I say no bumper stickers, but then I'll get in trouble with all the lesbians who like to cover the back of their Subarus with them.
Oh, of course. Of course. I'm not a big bumper sticker person myself. I never have been.
Me either.
Although I remember back when I was in high school, I would see a car driving down the road, often a Subaru actually, and they would have the rainbow, but it would be like a thin strip in the bumper. And I'd be like, they're gay. I was like, yeah.
I used to have a friend who lived in Northern Virginia, worked in the general DC area. In fact, he worked for AOL when they were, at their height. And I think an early pioneer in doing something fun with vanity plates, because at the time, Virginia had several different designs of vanity plates, and they had one that had like a round seal in the middle, so like a state seal. And so he got one that had the letters spaced out because it was just 4 letters, and it said WHRE, so that with the seal, it said whore.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love that. I love that. That's great. But yeah,
anyway,
so
moving right along.
I'm glad that that the courts did kind of prevail. That we prevailed on this one, because that crazy. You can say like no fags, but you can't say gay.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you had fag on a license plate, I would object to that and say, okay, yeah, there's really no way to get around, that as being a, even though a lot of gay people I know call themselves fags, there's really no way to get around that being a derogatory term.
Right. But this is why for me the vanity plate strikes me as like this kind of uncomfortable thing, because it's essentially you can custom ask the government to sanction a word or a statement, because it is printed, it is a state thing. It is, it is a legal state license or, plate. Right. And so like, let's take something like the word tranny. Some people, especially I think people who are sort of older trans folks, that's a word that they actually like are fine with and, sort of take as a mantle and they like it. And a lot of younger trans folks really do not like that word and find it offensive and that it really isn't one that you should be using.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like the opposite of how today there's so many younger people or, people who are our age or younger who are fine with the word queer. And yet there are a lot of people who are like generation before mine who look and I remember being part of an organization many years ago that our friend Tom Riley started called Digital Queers. Mm-hmm. And people would come up to me in booths that we'd have like in the gay district in Seattle. And they'd be like, I really take offense at your use of that word, because they grew up in an era when that was something that was hurled as definitely an insult at them. And so I can see that just from the opposite side with the word tranny.
Well, and that's what I'm getting at is like by making it this kind of like sort of quasi-governmental, quasi-private speech, because it is like an official sort of state license, but you can choose what you want on it. It's putting some like random, like paunchy dude in Sacramento in this unenviable position to kind of be like, is this one okay? Is this not what? I don't know. Is it worth it? Like, I don't know. I just think maybe no vanity plates. But in any case, glad that this was decided the way it was.
If you see an electric vehicle on the road that's a Nissan, that is a Nissan electric vehicle in Southern California, and the license plate says mutual, don't throw a rock at my car.
Okay, I won't. But anyway, so that was a win. We had but in the meantime, we've had lots of rough days in our community. And just generally, we really try to focus this show on the LGBTQ community because there's so much going on right now and so many terrible things that it just boggles the mind. And you just see the full court press of Project 2025 bearing down at us at every goddamn minute. And it's exhausting and scary. And it doesn't just affect our community, it affects everyone, especially immigrants, people of color, you name it. So
people have to like free speech.
Yeah, free speech. And we're seeing kind of, a lot of major corporations and major institutions sort of laying supine and just rolling over and peeing on themselves like a sad little poodle, as opposed to having any kind of backbone. So that's all to say that we're going to this show is focused on LGBTQ stuff, even though we are acknowledging that all that stuff does affect our community too. But we don't have the time to get into all that because this show would just be 24/7. And there are other great outlets that are doing that work. But there is plenty to talk about with our community, including a recent story that was really just sort of shows where this administration is at. So Kash Patel, who always looks like he borrowed his big brother's suit and is sort of peeing his pants, but he's apparently the head of the FBI. He recently fired an FBI agent in training for displaying a gay pride flag on his desk while he was appointed to being a field officer in California last year. So the trainee, who was a FBI support specialist in LA, received a letter on October 1st signed by Kash Patel, the scared little cross-eyed frog himself, claiming that he had displayed a improper, quote, political message in the workplace during his assignment and fired him, citing the current president's Article 2 powers to dismiss federal agency career personnel. So this is kind of where we're at with this administration. We've seen and we've talked about the slow move to erase even the concept of gayness from this administration. Obviously, there was an executive order very early on talking about the fact that this administration only acknowledges two biological genders, male and female, assigned at birth, or sex rather, and gender isn't something that they acknowledge. We then saw sort of the slow drip of especially things in the Department of Defense, or I guess now the Department of War, which is just like the dumbest thing ever. Everything they do is dumb. But they, taking Harvey Milk's name off of a boat, getting rid of all the sort of senior women leadership in the armed forces, making it so that trans folks can't serve openly in the military. And now just having a gay flag on your desk at the FBI is grounds for termination by the head of the FBI himself. So it's pretty clear where their heads are at.
Yeah, up their ass.
There is up their ass. Exactly. But, they are targeting not, and this has always been the case. It's not just the trans community. It's not just the bi folks. It's not just the illegal, folks who are undocumented. They're just squarely targeting everyone at this point. I mean, a gay pride flag, we don't even know if this person is gay. This would be a straight ally, but just having that flag, in a coffee cup on your desk can get you fired now from this administration. Yeah. So that shows where their head's at. And it's pretty chilling, not surprising, but pretty sad. And the thing that's like kind of astounding to me is that they find the time to do these little gestures of cruelty, and
I found, honestly, taking a look at just really, really current events, I found it refreshing to hear from several people who are in senior leadership positions in our defense system who stood up for the values of diversity after they were called, the generals, the admirals, and so on, that were called to Washington, dispatched to Washington for a little pep rally that the Secretary of War, which he's really not yet because the Congress has to approve calling the Department of Defense the Department of War, and they have not yet, but that there were so many people in those leadership positions who not only sat on their hands and did not laugh and did not clap at that event held in Quantico a week ago, but in fact spoke on condition of anonymity, or in some cases actually spoke outright and even wrote articles for various publications stating that part of why we have the best armed forces in the world is because of that diversity. And it was really refreshing to me to see how many people in those leadership positions took that attitude and conveyed that, because it tells me that the quote-unquote commander-in-chief does not have an awful lot of support at the level, below him, directly below him.
Yeah. But there's no reason why he should. I mean,
no.
Appointing Hegseth, who is so unqualified and just such a joke, to such a senior position, I think signals to people who have a long and storied career in a very august institution that this administration literally does not care.
Well, this administration has done most of its human resources work through central casting.
Yes, and Fox News. Yeah, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
and the thing is, like, you know, people have talked about this, that at the end of the day, they're doing a lot of bad stuff. And a lot of the bad stuff is actually done sort of in very boring ways that aren't even publicized. Rulemaking and allowing laws to sunset and attrition and just sort of small ways that they're just sort of cutting everything to pieces. But what they really want to be doing, and they seem to love to be doing, is making essentially TikTok videos. You know, Kristi Noem going out, you know, and wearing a flak jacket with, you know, a flashlight, you know, shock and awe videos that look like some, you know, sort of shitty version of a like McG movie, you know, where they're rappelling down from a helicopter, you know, and night vision goggles and all this stuff. It's governance by YouTube, basically. I mean,
I guarantee you that if, in fact, we had ever, with any of our previous administrations, Republican or Democrat, had ever had an experience where a president himself created a fake AI video about other elected senior officials to our government, as happened with a couple of, you know, senators, representatives, that president, without a doubt, would have been run out of the White House in no time flat, would have been impeached, hands down, for pulling a stunt like that. And the fact that this past week we had the President of the United States using time on the taxpayer dime, sitting in his oval on his gold throne, creating fake videos, just absolutely abhorrent.
You know, I mean, it just shows that everyone who's in charge of this government, including the current head of it, the way that they are signaling and the way that they message and everything they do shows contempt for the government that they ostensibly run itself. They're not treating it seriously at all. They, you know, the social media posts, you know, like there was one, I think, that the president posted of like an AI one where he's like the Grim Reaper set to like Blue Oyster Cult. I mean, the fact that the president of the United States is posting essentially joke troll videos on the official social media for the White House, it's an embarrassment. I mean, and, you know, I'm sure that a lot of probably every other country on the planet is just looking at this and just cringing and laughing, because, you know, it just shows sort of the idiocracy level that we are at the moment. And the fact that movie, you know, seemed like really like an overly broad, stupid joke, and now seems underplayed, is very sad. But moving on, we do have other stories for you. So Kash Patel has been busy. We also have a story that is coming up with the Supreme Court, which is hearing arguments about the legality of Colorado's ban on LGBTQ conversion therapy. This is a big one. A lot of states, for obviously good reasons, have banned conversion therapy for gay kids because first of all, it doesn't work. Second of all, it's abusive. Third of all, it's usually kind of these cockamamie made up things by, you know, ex-gay people, or just pruriently minded straight people who want to harass gay kids. It never works. I mean, we've talked about this at length, and it's been documented at length from the beginning. All of these, you know, Jonah and Exodus and all these. Ex-gay doesn't work. Conversion doesn't work. It just brutalizes and terrorizes kids. And a lot of states recognize that and have banned it. But there is now a case coming up at the Supreme Court that is arguing, of course, that the state bans are a violation of the First Amendment right of Christian counselors who want to engage in conversion therapy. So we'll see what happens. Knowing this court, who has shown itself to be absolutely obsequious when it comes to anything religious. You just say religion and they just, again, roll over and pee like a poodle. So I assume that what's going to happen is they're going to say, yeah, no, it's right. There's a First Amendment right to do conversion therapy, but we'll see what happens.
If that's the case, couldn't you make an argument on the other side that doctors should prescribe that people who are MAGA should put a gun to their head and pull the trigger?
What do you mean?
I mean, if it's their free speech right to suggest that somebody take their life because they're mentally ill and so deeply entrenched in that ideology, what's to say that that's not free speech too?
Right. I mean, it goes to the fact that, like, what is a good practice, right? I mean, the thing is, like, this goes back to, this goes all the way up, this goes to HHS. Right now we're looking at, RFK Jr., just saying that basic sort of science is no longer relevant. That autism is caused by Tylenol. It's like they just say dumb things that I don't know, they read on Reddit or something, and that's now policy. But yeah, it's a good point that, like, there's no sign that conversion therapy works. There are plenty of signs that it's very harmful. Mental health professionals roundly don't agree with it. As something that is either beneficial or even neutral. It is actually wildly bad. But yeah, exactly like you say. They're just freeballing and saying, let's go for it. And so, yeah, if that's the case, yeah, I guess a counselor could say anything they want as long as it is a deeply held religious belief. Maybe there could be some kind of,
It's my deeply held religious belief that all people who wear red baseball caps with 4 letters on them, that they are mentally ill and that there's no cure for them, so that they should put a gun to their head and eliminate themselves so that they don't eat up all the oxygen and the food and all that for the planet, and that they need to just be gone. That's my deeply held personal religious belief, and therefore I should be allowed to tell people and to persuade my doctors to tell their patients who are Republicans and supporting this current administration that they should off themselves and they shouldn't have any consequences because it's protected by the First Amendment. Come on, that's absurd.
Yeah, it's dumb. But, the Supreme Court has shown itself to not really have any scruples at all. And, John Roberts, I think, will go down in history as being one of several people, including Mitch McConnell and, Mike Johnson, as being
listed in the credits under the character that Vinny Pastore was
of the American democratic experiment. Yeah. Yes, but we've got lots more for you. Are you ready for it? That was just a little teaser. One of the things that's been really upsetting to me.
Hold on, let me go get a visqueen tarp, and because I feel like before this is done, we're going to be covered in shit.
Oh, whoa. So one of the things that I have been really dismayed by is watching the dismantling of news media or the defanging of news media, whether by force or by coercion or otherwise. And, there have been a couple things so obviously the defunding of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has had a huge effect on PBS and NPR. So that's been one thing. And then we have the major news networks or major networks that have capitulated to funny men being taken off of the TV because the current president doesn't like their jokes about him.
Folding like a cheap suit.
Exactly. And then we have this story, which is pretty awful. And it actually has to do with someone who is technically part of our community, but I don't think we want her. Bari Weiss, you may know that name. She is a rabble-rousing right-wing journalist, and she was briefly at the New York Times, and I never understood why they had her on, because she is just an awful right-wing firebrand, not just the worst. And she's anti-trans, she's fully just kind of MAGA, just a monster. And I didn't understand why the New York Times had her, except that the editor of their opinion page is a right-wing idiot, and is part of why when I walked by the New York Times building the other day by Port Authority, and I looked at it and I was like, God, I used to love this institution. I used to really value it. It meant a lot to me when I lived in New York City, and it felt impenetrably august, that they had the means to be powerful and speak power, truth to power, put the resources behind newsmaking. All that's gone. I mean, it is just garbage now. And their op-ed page is terrible. They don't do much news anymore. It's a lot of it's opinion. And most of the opinion is now this kind of namby-pamby, both sides, terrible. Anyway, Bari Weiss was there for a hot minute, and then I think, anyway, left. I don't remember the circumstances. But our good friends at CBS, the brave CBS is looking to acquire the Free Press, the inaptly named digital publication founded by Bari Weiss. And Bari Weiss will take on the role of editor-in-chief of CBS News. Think about that for a second. Edward R. Murrow, Walter Cronkite, Bari Weiss. And so what we're seeing is, and this is all kind of in the background of all of this, is, if you remember, Paramount Skydance. The reason why a lot of these things have been happening is that they wanted this acquisition to happen. And CBS Paramount was acquired by Skydance, a media company owned by David Ellison, who is a MAGA Republican.
Yeah,
and they're now just
Larry Ellison, who is the CEO of.
Yeah, the son of Larry Ellison. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Larry, of course, is the guy who's the man behind Oracle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm. So what we're seeing is CBS News is going to essentially cease to be a news outlet at all. I don't imagine Bari Weiss is going to preside over a neutral news source.
Yeah, I think actually that they should change their logo, and they should just and the logo type, and instead of having the letter CBS, they should have it SEEBS, because that's what it's going to be. You're only going to see BS on there once that happens.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised actually that the entire staff of 60 Minutes has not walked yet.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's coming.
It's really sad and embarrassing. And it's not the only example. I mean, we're just seeing one of the things that we've talked a lot about Robbie Starbuck on this show. And one of the things that I found remarkable since we've last talked to you is Facebook, or Meta, I guess it's Meta in Facebook, whatever, has hired Robbie Starbuck to be their anti-bias czar for...
What?
You hadn't heard about this?
I've not heard about this.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So they hired Robbie Starbuck to be their, let me get the title right here, their advisor on AI bias. And so what he is doing, I guess, is making sure that whatever training of the Meta AI isn't accidentally too woke. So he's literally on staff at Meta now to combat AI bias.
Does that mean he lives here in California?
I don't know where he lives.
I think we should get the governor to imprison him.
But yeah,
Enemy of the state.
so
Literally.
that's another little piece. You know, it's like these Barry Weisses, these Chaya Rychicks, these Robbie Starbucks not only continue to just like live like black mold on the sheetrock of America, but are taking over institutions that they didn't even have any connection with before. Robbie Starbuck at Meta, Barry Weiss at CBS. Okay, I guess. So anyway, bummer, but again, want to keep you abreast of the insanity that is happening. And we're just scratching the surface here. There were about 7 stories that we didn't even get to, or we won't get to, because there was too much to talk about. Another story that, again, just was in the news recently, this was in today's New York Times, is that Texas LGBTQ teenagers are dealing with a public school clampdown on gay student organizations, LGBTQ pride clubs, sexuality alliances, really anything that speaks to the LGBTQ experience in the sort of Texas K through 12 environment. Off limits now. They're getting rid of all of it. And so, you know, it's talking about how there are a lot of students, you know, who are feeling, with good reason, that they are no longer welcome at the public schools that, you know, they are entitled to go to, that their families pay taxes to go to. But because of the moment we're in and the state that they are in, that they are in the crosshairs and are basically told you're not. Yeah.
I think that this may not, I know that there's a lot of people who are probably going to disagree with me, but this may not be a bad thing. It may be an important component to fix a real problem, because these are our leaders of tomorrow. These are the people who are going to remember how they got fucked. These are the people who are not going to be changed by, you know, some moron or group of morons who think that they can control the independent, you know, lives of all these people. And I have a feeling that this, you know, when you bottle something up long enough, eventually it explodes. And I have a feeling that this may ultimately explode in a way that they are going to deeply regret, because they're in the wrong. And we know that they're in the wrong. And a lot of straight people know that they're in the wrong.
Mm-hmm. I hope so. I hope that's the case. You know, one of the things that I've found, one of many things that I found really dispiriting in the past couple months since we've done the show is that when you look at the budget that was passed, the extraordinary budget that was granted to ICE, as essentially a paramilitary organization operating in this country that reports directly to the current president. And when you look at their actions, you know, and we've seen this time and time again, they wear face masks, they don't wear uniforms, they are untraceable, not to be held to account, in unmarked cars. There's no way to really even know if it is a government agent or a random vigilante. And no one in the government seems, or no one is bringing a suit. I don't see much action.
California has countered that, and there's now a law that has been passed here that they cannot do that in the state of California. Now, I realize that some people are going to think, well, they supersede it because they're federal and this is state. But I know that Gavin Newsom and the various people in powers or in positions of power in the state are working very actively to thwart those efforts. And frankly, I think we're going to get to a place where people are going to say, if I can't see who you are and know what your story is, I'm going to blow your fucking face away.
But the thing is, like, but why I bring all that up is, you talked about how people will get sick of this stuff, of the demonization of queer kids or whatever. And people might get upset about it, and they should. But when you have a paramilitary that is completely without impunity, just running roughshod and doing whatever the fuck they want and doing the bidding of the current president, what does that mean for things like, and let's say to the people of Austin, Texas, right? They're in Texas. It's more of a liberal bastion. And let's say that they start protesting, these policies. And you have random dudes with bandanas on their faces and tear gas that has been supplied by the federal government. And they have no sense of humanity, no accountability, no qualms, going in and just wreaking havoc and arresting, under what authority, unclear, but arresting people or detaining them. People might get upset, but what happens when getting upset is something that it's like basically kind of these like minor Tiananmen squares at this point. We're seeing them on social media all the time. So what do we do about that? It's pretty gruesome.
Well, I think we need to begin looking to our legal system and legal scholars to figure out how to neuter the Supreme Court, because we're still winning a lot of cases in district and circuit courts around these kinds of issues.
Yep.
And I think that is going to be a significant, thing. And I do think that this presidency is effectively over, even though it wouldn't be over technically for another couple of years next November, provided we can actually vote.
Yeah, that's the big provided. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think I want to end this week's show on a good story, a positive story. We like to have positive stories.
Yeah.
And this is a positive story. Kind of. So apparently we still have a CDC. I didn't realize this because most of the CDC was fired because, of course, public health doesn't matter now. You can you can't take Tylenol anymore because that causes autism. I guess you can drink raw milk, I guess, if you're sick, according to RFK, or eat some beef tallow fries. But I guess we do have some kind of CDC because the CDC has reported that overall STI cases fell for the third year in a row. In 2024, there were 2.2 million reported cases, which was down 9% from the year before. Gonorrhea saw the steepest decline at nearly 10%. And officials credit increased awareness, expanded testing, and prevention, such as Doxy-PEP, which we have talked about on here before. Get your Doxy, friends. And public health experts say that even limited use of Doxy-PEP is reducing cases community-wide. The data shows no progress on congenital syphilis, which passes from mothers to infants. So that's a little bit different. Cases rose for the 12th consecutive year of that, reaching 4,000. Advocates warn that funding cuts for things like the CDC projects we're talking about threaten progress, and Republicans are pushing reductions in HIV and STI programs because they literally do not care if you die or are sick. They certainly don't care if you're sick because they're trying to get rid of any kind of health insurance they can possibly get their hands on, whether it's the VA or Medicaid or Medicare, you name it.
They need to give that back to the trillionaires.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So they can buy another media network and turn it into a propaganda wing. But yeah, so good news on that front in terms of the STIs. And another reason why, again, Doxy-PEP is a big, important piece of the puzzle, as is PrEP. And I hope that those still continue to be available because, again, prophylaxis seems to be something that RFK is anathema to. He doesn't believe in vaccines, so he probably doesn't believe in PrEP either. Probably thinks that maybe gay people should just die, because they have butt sex.
Why not?
But in the meantime, these medicines are available and they do work. And so we are happy that that is the case. So a little bit of a roller coaster coming back to the show. But John, I'm glad we are back in the saddle. We will come back with you each week with stories for our community. In the meantime,
a couple other things I want to note. If you want to follow some other stuff that is tied to broader stories outside of the LGBTQ community and what we talk about on the show, I have launched with a group of people another network called the United American Network, which is available at unitedamericanetwork.com. And there we talk about some of the other politics of what's going on and the things we need to be paying attention to throughout the country. But also, I want to remind folks, just take a second here to remind folks that if you live in the state of California and you are registered to vote in California, that we have a very critical election to try and balance the tables with this gerrymandering nonsense coming out of Texas, where the legislature there has approved a plan to redistrict in such a way that they would get 5 additional Republican seats in the House of Representatives nationally. California's Governor Gavin Newsom has put a proposition on the ballot, Proposition 50, which a vote yes on that would be to authorize, not even something that the people in Texas were allowed to do, but here in California, in fairness and being a democratically run state, and I don't mean party, I mean like a democracy, voters will receive a single question on a ballot in November. And that question will be as to whether or not you want to allow the state of California to redistrict. And it would give California roughly another 5 seats in Congress for the Democrats. There are more districts that they could have gone after and gerrymandered to get and go after more seats. But Gavin Newsom wants to keep, what is fair. And so I highly, highly, highly encourage you that if you are a voter in California, please vote yes on 50 this November 4th.
Absolutely.
That said, we're going to come back in just a moment with our guest on this show and have some fun for about 20 minutes or so. We're going to be joined by Nick DiRamio, who is a content creator that you've probably seen on YouTube. He's got about 350,000 or so followers, I think. So we'll have some fun with him, and I think this will be the first of many visits that we'll have with Nick in the future. So stay with us as we continue with Richie and John.
Do you want to meet a family with a transgender kid? Here we are. Max loves to do backflips. Max loves to play his ukulele. Max loves to just be a kid and just be himself. When I found out I was pregnant, all I really wanted was a happy, healthy, whole child. And that's what I got. If you've never met a transgender child before, what I want you to know is that that child is no different than yours. They have the same hopes and dreams and deserve the same equality as your child does. We tell our kids as often as we can that we love them in as many ways as possible. There are some politicians who are trying to tear my family apart simply because my son is transgender. Trans kids don't have a political agenda. They are just kids. They just want to be left alone. My family's just like yours. We love our kids unconditionally, and we will never stop fighting for them. Stand with us. Protect our families.
Welcome back to Richie and John, and we've had a change of wardrobe, and we're ready for our conversation with our guest today. Nick DiRamio is here, and he is a YouTuber that many of you probably are familiar with. If you're not, you should check him out. Go to YouTube and look up Nick DiRamio. There you see his name on the screen and his address for his own website at nickdiramio.com. Richie, I'm going to let you start us off.
Yeah. So Nick, tell us about the whole enterprise, as it were, and really how you got started, sort of doing this, because, as a sort of a fledgling, person doing a podcast, it'd be interesting to hear sort of your how you got started with all this.
For sure. I love talking to other persons doing a podcast, and I love the costume change, by the way. Looking great. I got started with YouTube, as it were, as like a social media manager for beauty and hair care brands, where I kind of just got a little tired of putting in all of these hours and all this work for people or brands or entities that weren't really. I kind of am a spotlight hog, so I needed to get a little bit more of the shine for all of that effort. But I mean, in terms of social media, I started posting on YouTube back when YouTube first began in the 2000s, and I think I kind of got hooked right away on the idea of like putting things out there and then having an audience who consumes them. Like I was messing around with Dreamweaver and HTML and building websites and all of that even earlier than when video was even something you could post on the internet. So, I mean, I'd always been a aspiring filmmaker. I started entering film festivals and things when I was like 12 years old. So I got my first bits of like taste of fame, if you will, back then. And, as it turns out, as the audience grew over the years, when I started really posting in 2016 with this current channel that I'm on, that it becomes kind of addictive. And when you find an audience online who really relates to you and they get your humor, it becomes like very validating and gratifying, and it's something that I just wanted to keep doing. So it turns out to be like just the D or C or E list fame level that I aspire to is right around there on the internet. So I've just
so the people
who resonate with the work.
So the people who are watching or listening to us know what you do on YouTube is kind of akin to one thing that they may have watched on cable TV, which is similar to Talk Soup.
Yeah, it's very much like The Soup in terms of format, where it's like a clip show where we're looking at, clips of content that's found media and then sort of taking it from there, like allowing the clip to end on a ridiculous moment or the moment that is called into question and then ripping off of that. So it's very much like, I like to think of it like The Soup with like a sassy gay film school teacher with a little bit of mystery science theater in terms of like how we're reviewing a full-length movie and kind of recapping it from there. But yeah, so clip shows I've always found hilarious because nobody can possibly watch all of the content that's out there, especially now in the age of streaming, when it's like you would go mad even trying to watch all of the ridiculous content that's out there. But luckily, I can watch a lot of that myself, and a lot of it gets recommended to me from my audience, and I'm pointed in these directions of like, oh, you have to see this. So then I get to kind of amplify that and let the people who watch my channel know, like, oh, you have to see this. Like, and if you can't watch the whole thing, this ridiculous Lifetime movie, let me just pull out the best bits for you, and we'll laugh about it.
I mean, it almost kind of helps, at least for like the people who have like that, who are watching your channel, almost like a sort of a forged community, because the thing that it's like, it's not like, when I was a youngster back when things were still in black and white, there were only so many shows that you could watch at a given time. And so when you went to school the next day, everyone had watched Saved by the Bell the day before. But now, like you said, there's so much to watch. And if you ever like go to, just meet some new people, you're like, oh, have you watched this? They're like, no. And they're like, have you watched this? You're like, no. And there's sort of no like commonality. But when you then have a platform where you can be like, here are the 10 things you have to watch because they're just too funny. Then your community, can kind of like resonate and build the in jokes and kind of have that language in common.
Totally. And it's like this strange phenomenon that I've had ever since I started consuming YouTube primarily as like my entertainment. It's like this thing where people are like, have you seen this movie from Oscar season or whatever? And I'm like, no, but I've seen every recap. So go ahead, give it to me. Like, what do you got to say about it? Because there is just, there's only so many hours in the day. And like this capitalist hellscape requires that some of those are required towards like profit making or work or whatever it is that we have to do every day. So it can't all be just like leisurely consumption. Although I do my best to make it that, to skew it in that direction. But yeah, so I agree. There's like the water cooler talk. We can't have a big enough water cooler to discuss everything and there's just not a long enough coffee break. And if you do get a coffee break, it's not even in a real office anymore. So it makes sense that we would all kind of need the watered down, or the I guess you would call it the Cliff's Notes version of whatever people are watching. And I like to think that I fill an area where it's like, I'm not really watching the prestige stuff, like I couldn't tell you what happened on the last season of Lost, but if you're watching like From Where the Heart Is on Lifetime, which is a colonial series of dramatized, God-loving people, it's that kind of stuff I can really speak to, which granted, it might not hold the attention of most people, but if they could just boil it down to the most ludicrous moments with their perfectly curled hair, then, let that be what my show satisfies for them.
How did you feel about Honey Boo Boo?
I feel a twinge of sadness anytime I see a child on television. And especially now, it's like, this poor girl, they took everything she said and turned it into a catchphrase or a t-shirt. And then now, if you still keep up with Honey Boo Boo on TikTok, which is an option, you know that her mother stole basically every dollar she has, because the laws that protected child performers from having all of their money taken, like Coogan accounts, things like that, are just now catching up to like child vloggers or people who perform primarily on the internet. So I think that's like I find it fascinating to be in this line of work at its inception. Basically, it's like the first generation of content creators out in the workforce. And it's a growing number. I think now there's like more than 1 million people who make full-time income off of working online or working in content creation. And so it's still kind of the Wild West, just like with AI or like internet profiteering in general was back when the internet first became publicly accessible. It's like there's a lot of legislation that needs to catch up and protect people who we will later find out were being, exploited or marginalized in some way from all of this. So it's poor Honey Boo Boo, but hopefully hopefully she got a hold of some of that money to go to college, which I think was the issue when she realized like, oh, mom paid for their mortgage with my college money. It's like, oh God, kids don't know what they're doing. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So like when Honey Boo Boo was making us all laugh, she was just repeating the thing that the producers kept saying, like, that's you, that's your good stuff. So it's fascinating, and probably will continue to only grow in its sadness as we hear from these people more and more over time.
Yeah. Well, there's kind of like, the boom and bust. It's like the Andy Warhol's 15 minutes. Now it's like 15 nanoseconds. It's like, and I always am curious how people do actually sort of monetize that. Like Hawk Tuah Girl, it's like, oh yeah, she was everywhere. And then it was like, she's, last week's Labubu and like thrown in the dumpster. Where'd she go? Like,
totally.
So
it's like, amazing how many different avenues people have. I think that's like sort of, I'm very grateful for my career, like my office experience in like marketing or in content marketing, really, for big brands, because I had a better sense of what the different avenues are to for revenue streams for like someone who creates content. And it was never like, okay, I've got to continue to harp on this one little funny thing that I said once. And it was more about like, okay, just give them more stuff to laugh at, more stuff to watch, figure out the different tools that are available and platforms that will help me just keep broadening the ways that I can continue to support myself in this. Because it's like, Hawk Tuah Girl, she created this rug pull cryptocurrency thing that ended up scamming a bunch of people, and she was canceled, before month 3 of her worldwide fame. And I wanted to avoid those types of pitfalls. I know that there are different ways that you can give people enhanced access to your content, or find different ways of spending time with the people who really want to, and finding ways to like just optimize all of those things, because you got to treat it like a business, obviously, when you're working for yourself. And there are lots of different emails that you get that are like, here's this great opportunity to make a lot of money really fast, and also irreparably destroy your reputation with the people who trust you. And so it's about kind of weeding through those and figuring out and having people around you who help you kind of protect your time and your work, so that you're getting compensated for your time while also still maintaining that like trust and integrity that you build with the audience.
Nick, Richie and I have a lot of friends who do digital or online content. Some that do it just for fun, others who do it as an adult-oriented content that is intended to be their primary income. Do you find that this is a sustainable business to be in?
I think it is. Like I said, if there's a little bit of strategy, or if you can lean on people who have successfully outlived like that 15 nanoseconds of fame. I think my heart goes out to people working in the adult industry in like self-published content, because it is if being a YouTuber weren't oversaturated enough, like when it comes to the adult side of things, it's even more so. And I think the challenge there comes from it's less personality driven, and it's obviously a more visual medium, and people, tend to be less loyal to a certain personality. Everybody has their favorite adult performer, perhaps, or not everybody. Most people do, and remaining loyal to them on like a subscription site is a little bit harder to gain that type of follower if you're not engaging with the audience on a personality basis. If there's not that cult of personality where they loved everything you say, they think that you'd be friends in real life, there's less opportunity for that in adult content. Not that there is none, and I think that the best or the longest running kind of personalities in that space tend to be the ones who find opportunities to connect with their audience on a personal level. So I think that there's definitely a chance at building like a lifelong career in those spaces, but I do think you need to really start blending the two. If it's like, yes, sex sells, but does it sell month after month? Will they continue subscribing? And I think that the key to that is to also blend in a lot of personality, a lot of letting people know the point of difference for you is not just, what you can offer visually, but also what you can, how you can make them feel, how you can make them laugh. Do they feel like they want to meet you in real life? Right. That's the kind of thing that I think for me has helped me have the really amazing loyal fan base that I have had. It wasn't just the one video that went viral or whatever it was that introduced them to me, but they were able to go back and watch a backlog of content where I continue to just say unhinged things or like get vulnerable while also kind of, poking fun at myself, and then also making fun of this whatever stupid movie we're watching. So that there's always like a framework for them to go back to and watch.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we've seen with our friends who are doing adult content is that the fact that they have opened themselves up to having communication directly with their fan base, whether it be through a service like X has the spaces where they can talk with them and have forums with them, or like we've hosted parties for friends to get together who've all met through these various online channels, some of whom are performers, who are content creators. And the fact that people can have that personal one-on-one relationship that they can develop, I think is something that, whether somebody chooses to do it or not, that they know that they can have that added. It's not like something you normally would get from somebody who's a TV or a movie star.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's like the point of difference between like an influencer / content creator and a mainstream celebrity. Obviously, one of them is put on a higher pedestal in front of mainstream audiences, but do they feel accessible? Do they feel like you could hang out with them in real life? And do they allow for that? There are probably performers out there who enjoy having that separation where they're like, no, I'd rather be an aspirational, model who people wish they could get with. Or are they more like, oh, he seems like someone who would be in my hometown who I would still hang out with, or who I would meet at the gay bar and we'd be able to talk? I think that there's like that's the kind of difference. It's like, are you showing up in a way that feels authentic to you as a person? And then where an actor might just be really trying to bring realism to the role, the invented role or the fictional narrative that they're participating in. And I think it's like, there are obviously actors and mainstream performers who are able to feel very authentic in their interviews or in their off-screen work. But if that's not their primary income, is performing in that way or being on screen in that way, then it's it could just be really good media training. It could just be they could just be very personable in real life. But if like the act of being on screen involved me bringing my full personality to the people, then that takes a little bit more, I guess, probably just experience or vulnerability or willing to accept that I'm not perfect and never going to look perfect at all times. And luckily, I had 4 years before the channel really blew up of just like posting to a smaller audience and growing, but small. And then when things blew up, there was that backlog. And I also had that rapport with the camera where it feels like energetically like I'm speaking with the audience.
Do you have a list of like do not do and do this, like 3 or 4 things of either that you could share with people if people are really interested in doing this? Like the recommendation of you absolutely do not want to make this mistake, or you absolutely do want to do this thing to help propel you into this future.
Yeah, there are a few things. Like I feel like, for example, I would recommend if people are trying to post videos online, or especially a long form video like on YouTube, to make your first couple videos without the pressure. Don't pressure yourself into sitting down and pressing record and thinking, I have to post this video once it's done. Like you can shoot a couple of them and edit them together and learn the process of making a YouTube video without posting it for anyone to see. And, they always, in film school, someone was said like, for making TV shows, the first few pancakes off the griddle are always kind of messed up, and you have to allow for that. So I made a few videos. I remember my first one that I shot was like reviewing my favorite flavors of sugar-free chewing gum, which is just a heinous topic to subject anybody to, so I'm glad it never made it to the internet. But I learned a lot just by shooting that, like of how, oh God, this is such a pain in the ass to set up the lighting. And then the editing, I'm getting really bogged down in the weeds with this part. So it helped me identify which places to streamline. And also just like, okay, maybe don't slouch so much. Maybe work on your list a little bit. Before I was able to feel like I got videos out, and I was like, for the first one at least, I was like, you have to be comfortable with what you're putting out and feel like not embarrassed by it, because you have to promote that to the people. And that was the other part, like learning to not try and hide the fact that I was doing this. It would have been great to have posted the first video, have it be a viral success, and then the people from high school, all they see of me is, oh, I'm a viral success. But it actually doesn't work that way for most people. It took me having to post on my personal Facebook page, like, oh, I'm doing this now, like, watch it, scrutinize it, decide if it's cringy, and then tell your friends about it, if, whether it's because you're making fun of me or because you love it. Like you kind of have to own what you're doing. And as soon as I was able to like let the people know this is what I'm doing, I'm trying to be a YouTube content creator. Like, I know, sorry. But as soon as I was able to do that and not try to have it just be this secret Hannah Montana style double life, people start taking it seriously. And, I started getting deals from brands or making a little bit of extra income off of it. And then I was like, well, those people who are making fun of me for it they can't say shit because I'm making a little bit of extra money off of it. Everyone has a side gig, like, let this be mine. And then the final thing would be like probably in dealing with like public relations in terms of comments, reading comments, responding to comments. There's always going to be things that people don't agree with me on, and a lot of the time, especially working in sort of a more comedic space, that it's easy to offend, which is fair. I mean, I don't want to be someone who's offensive or known for like offending certain groups or being like this like controversial figure. Leave that for the Fox News presenters. I like to be inclusive in all ways. I like to like make people feel safe when they're watching my content. So when I get feedback that something I've said was a little bit, colored by my white privilege or whatever, or male privilege or anything like this, I try to be open to it and really take it in, but also not get too discoursey in the comment section itself. I just find that the more that somebody responds in writing to the comments, the more opportunity it gives people to scrutinize your apology or your explanation, or the more I compelled I feel to explain rather than apologize and just validate somebody's experience.
I never do anything like that.
I know. I saw that play out recently because Austin, Texas recently got a new logo. And Ooh. I don't know if you saw any of this on Design Instagram. It was insane. People went nuts. They hated it. And
Ooh.
and you know, there were people kind of talking about it and savaging it, and it was done by Pentagram, which is a very good design company. You know, one of honestly the best. And, you know, and so some people were like, you know, we trust them. They know what they're doing. Other people were like, they clearly don't. And then one of the Pentagram, actually the designer in charge of that project got into the comments in Instagram, and it was not pretty because he was super defensive and was responding to every single negative comment and doubling and tripling down. And it just like, he was not winning. He was not winning. He was losing big time by doing that.
Yeah. And like, how can you win? Like, it's the court of public opinion. Like, they're not going to change their mind just because you come in and defend yourself. In fact, that's just going to fuel their argument with you even further. Cause you know, you just can't win people over on an individual basis like that unless you're making them feel heard and understanding like where they're coming from, which is, you know, that's tough too. That requires a certain level of emotional maturity. I think the universe every day that I didn't find this level of like publicity, you know, however low it may be compared to like, you know, Lady Gaga or something like this, like I get it. But even what I have now, I would have destroyed myself mentally if I were like in my early 20s or in my, you know, in high school, as some people are when they discover like their audience online. Because, you know, even when I was in an office working for hair care brands, I would take their feedback so personally. If you gave me some feedback at work, no matter how professional it was, I was taking that straight home to dwell on. And then vice versa, I was taking my personal problems into working with me. And it takes a lot of surviving bad days
and thick skin,
experiencing negative feedback to like kind of learn how to just separate myself from the work, even though it is my personality that I'm marketing and it is sort of the product that I'm selling. It is not my entire personality. It's not what people see of me online is not everything about me. And therefore their criticisms of me, although they may be framed as personal, you know, assumptions about me or attacks on who I must be as an entire person, because people will say wild stuff. They'll extrapolate one thing you say and tell you must be this kind of person who does this and this and this, and they're like, well, that, yes, but no, and sometimes, but I can't actually come and say all that because then, you know, that's just a fool's errand. So being able to separate a little bit from it and realize that, okay, as long as I'm putting out content that people are generally enjoying, and then if enough people are giving me valid feedback and I can ask the people around me who are in those communities and not be afraid to be wrong at those points, then I can always adjust, apologize broadly, or just apologize by doing better next time. You know, that's, I think, a more effective way of making people feel seen, because then those coming in, you might not be able to win back those people who decided to be disgusted by you. But if the next person in their similar position can come and watch the next video and not and feel welcomed or safe in that space, then that's a win for me.
Well, Nick, I don't think any of the people in our audience are going to be disgusted by you, and so much so that I want to invite you to come back and hang out with us from time to time on Richie and John.
I would love that.
We got to run for the hills here for this week's episode, but it's such a pleasure to get to bring you on and have you visit with us here on the show, and I'll look forward to some future visits. Give folks again your website address and your location on YouTube.
For sure. So you can find me on YouTube. Clip Breakdown is the name of the series, or you can go to nickd.tv, which will take you right to the YouTube channel, or nickdiramio.com to see everything else I got going on. And I look forward to further opportunities to discuss everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Richie, I'll see you next week.
Yep. See you then.
They try to take our voices. They try to